a little difficult to see from where you are right now, but I have 3 piles of books next to me. I have the books that I read in March, I have the books that I want to read in April, and then I have, you see how high up my hand is right there and how that was shaking the camera? I have a massive stack of the books that I acquired in March despite being on a book buying ban. Some of these I bought myself, some of these were from like publishers, influencer programs, whatever, but I'm really excited to get into this with y'all. Initially I was like, oh, I'll do 3 separate videos. No, we're just gonna do one big video, okay? And we're gonna try really hard to get this done before my son wakes up from his nap. It is currently 1:54, so I'm gonna say I'm hoping to get this done in less than 30 minutes. Let's dive in. First book I read in March was The Kingmaker by Kennedy Ryan. This was my first Kennedy Ryan book, and let me just say I understand the hype. I thought her prose was so devastatingly romantic. The chemistry between Maxim and Lennox in this book, absolutely electric. I don't know what that microtrope is where it's like he has been with loads of women, but he's only ever loved her. I eat that up every single time. It's also giving self-made billionaire romance vibes. We love to see it. And his dad is the villain. His dad is the villain. So that's a really exciting one. It's kind of enemies to lovers, but kind of not. And I love how spread out the romance is. I will say at first they meet when she's 17 years old. And I was like, Kennedy, my girl, my woman, I know you're not about to give me an underage FMC. And sure enough, she did not. I'm so happy to report, thank goodness. But it's like they meet when she's 17, they come back together when she's 21, they meet in like somewhere in Europe, Denmark, Amsterdam, whatever. And then she figures out who he actually is because he's been hiding his last name this whole time because his dad is this evil oil mogul who, I don't know why I said mogul like that, mogul who was laying pipelines in native territory. And she was like, and she's native, and it was this whole conflict. And so she, for a long time, she was like, F you, I'm not doing this. Like, you and me, we can never be. And then they have to figure out how to overcome that. And in the end, and then it ends on a huge cliffhanger. So now I have to buy the rest of the series. When will I read it? I don't know. I'm currently in the middle of like 7 series, but that's a whole other video for another story. I get the hype. I will say this was a 4-star read for me because personally, I don't think I was in the mood to read this book when I read this book. So even though it's an amazing book, it wasn't something that I personally was like, oh my gosh, I can't put this down. But the writing is incredible. The characterizations are so freaking good. I love Kennedy's writing, and I bought more of her books this month, so it's obvious to say that I will be reading more of her books. Oh, actually, I was wrong. Technically the first book, that was the second book I read in March. The first book I read in March was The Tainted Cut by Robert Bennett Jackson. I was sent this as an ARC by Del Rey. This is actually the first ever Del Rey ARC I was sent. It's like kind of, my baby is so special to me. Now that being said, the story, I wanted to like it. And there were a lot of parts of it that I did like. So I'll start there and then I'll veer into why I'm not giving this book a 5 stars. I'm giving this a 3 stars, and it is redeemed by the detailed, the thoughtful, the intentional world building. I don't know what their world is called, but they have this very specific caste structure within their empire. So they have these different rings of the empire, and basically the further out in the rings you are, the more susceptible you are to these, what they call Titan attacks, which are these gigantic leviathans that come out of the ocean and like trample through their barriers and kill people. And it's like this huge dangerous thing. So they have this whole guard set up in the outer rings that protect everybody from these leviathans. Now, not only are these monsters big and scary and we don't want them here because they're gonna, you know, ruin our villages and kill everybody, they also carry these things called contagions, and they're these small plants that when embedded in you, they can kill you, basically. So everything about them is so deadly and dangerous, and it's so interesting. Beyond that, the humans themselves, if you can call them humans, I'm gonna call them humans because I actually don't know what they are, but they can all be like enhanced with these, I don't know if I want to call them pseudoscientific, pseudo-magical alterations, basically, where they have some people that are super big and are designed to heavy things. They have some people that can commit things to memory really specifically when they associate with the scent, which I also just learned, this is a really interesting detail because I just learned that apparently with your sense of smell, it's like one of your 2 senses that can commit to memory without having to commit to thought. Everything else is connected to thought, but scent is directly correlated to memory. So that's also a really fun little scientific detail included in here. For the most part, I loved the characterizations. The narrator, the main character in here, works alongside this crazy, kooky, like Cheshire Cat personified investigator named Anna, and they're solving this series of murders. So it's a murder mystery plot in a fantasy setting. And I loved everything about her. I thought she was kooky. I thought she was witty. I thought she was whimsical. She had to literally blindfold herself because she was like, I'm overstimulated. I need to cut it all out so I can think clearly. And I was like, honestly, girl, you're so real for that. I can't even judge you. Like, I'm so here for that too. The same. Me too. Now, the part where I personally really struggled was genuinely the narrator. Like, the mystery side of things, super strong. All of the other characters, super strong. The world building, immaculate. But the narrator felt non-existent. The narrator felt like this very passive participant in the world around him. And it's like any attempt at a character arc that he had, in my opinion, was half-assed. It felt so anticlimactic. And it's like, oh, we're just going to throw this in there because this has to be in here. This is the first in, I think, what's going to be a trilogy. So maybe we'll see more character development in later ones. But he just felt so flat. It's like any moment where you would have expected a character to have an emotional reaction, he's like, well, I don't want to think about that. So I'm just going to push that down and I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing. But like, he never comes back around to feel that feeling. And I mean, even his big like character arc moment, which I don't want to spoil for anybody who's interested in reading this, it was just kind of like, oh, that was all. Like, the stakes on that end felt so low in comparison to the stakes everywhere else that I wanted to see more from that narrator. So overall, I did give it 3 stars because outside of the narrator, I feel like it was a really incredibly thought out book. I just really wish we could have seen more from that main character, both in terms of emotion, in terms of character development, and also in terms of character growth. I feel like it lacked quite a bit in that area. The next book I read, actually, I don't remember what order I read these in, and I don't have that right in front of my face, so we're just gonna go for it. I read Normal People by Sally Rooney. I am in my sad girl litfic era. I just need to point that out. I read A Little Life earlier this year, and I think it's created this addict for sad books in me. I know it's a very divisive book, and a lot of people are either like, oh my god, I love that book, it's one of the best books ever, or like, oh my god, it's trauma corn, it's agonizing, it is unnecessary. However you feel about it, I respect that. I personally, I don't know that I can recommend it. However, it is one of the best written books I've ever read. I do have my own issues with the books in terms of like the characters and the presentations, but that's another story for another day. This story, I think this is, for me at least, a right book at the right time. I found the prose itself to be simple yet immersive, and that's one of my favorite ways to read books, is when authors are such a master at their craft that they don't have to overcomplicate something in order to get across the depth of a point. And in this one specifically, we have Marianne and we have Connell, they live in Ireland, so this whole book is set in Ireland, and they go to, I guess in America we would call high school together, and she's the weirdo, he's the cool kid. She's just kind of like, oh, well, whatever, I'm smart anyway, and all of you people kind of suck, but wow, Connell, I love you. And Connell, like, is really popular and well-loved and really handsome, but on the inside, he feels still left out, which I feel like a lot of people can relate to that. It's one of those things where he's surrounded by people, but he constantly feels lonely. Well, they end up going to college together, and it turns into this whole, through the course of the next couple of years, they're just inextricably linked. Despite their attempts at seeing other people, they always come back together. And it's just so devastating seeing their sadness, seeing their loneliness, seeing their hope, seeing their self-worth all come together, and see them try to figure out what they want by the end of the book, because it felt very young in the way that they didn't know themselves yet, and you're watching them learn themselves, and they feel so uncertain about everything. And the ending felt very inconclusive, like nothing came together neatly. I don't know that I could call it a happy ending. I don't know that I could call it a sad ending. I can tell you I sobbed for 30 minutes after reading this, and I loved every second of it. So this is probably one of my favorite books that I read this year. I loved it so much, and I will recommend it to anybody that wants a sad book that they want to read. And okay, these next two that I read, I'm just gonna lump them together because I read them both in a fever dream. Like, I binged these. So to preface, I read Cruel Prince maybe 2 years ago. I was like just getting into book talk. I just got off my ACOTAR train, as one does when they're just joining book talk. And I was like, I'm just craving some fantasy romance. And everybody on the internet was saying, oh my gosh, Cruel Prince, Cruel Prince, Cruel Prince, Juden Carden, Juden Carden, Juden Carden. So I was like, okay, let me check this out. So I remember reading it from the library and I liked it, but I think my expectations had not been set correctly. And I don't think I appreciated it as much as I should have, because now, 2 years later, come back around to it, these, oh my god, they're worth the hype. I'm so mad at myself that it took me so long to finish this trilogy. So obviously it goes Cruel Prince, Wicked King, Queen of Nothing, but like the world building is so thoughtfully done. The characters are so distinct and so convincing. The banter, so intelligent. Like, you could just tell how smart Holly Black is when you're reading these books. There's no doubt in my mind. The language is so good. I love the prose. And something that I tend to struggle with in YA books is they can feel young, but they feel young in a way that feels immature, or like, especially emotionally immature. It's very like, wah, wah, wah. Like, it's a lot of teenage angst and like teenage tantrums. These voices, they felt young in the sense that Jude still has a lot to learn about the world and a lot of life lessons to learn, but it felt mature. It didn't feel like the entire character emphasis or like the entire characterization was around her being mad and sad and mopey. Like, she's a badass. There are some incredible fight scenes. I will say there is a romance in it, but don't read this trilogy for the romance. Read this trilogy for the high fantasy and stay for the romance. I'm not exaggerating when I say it is a 3-book burn. You start to get some incredible banter in this book, but it's really this one where it hits home, okay? I loved this so much. I need to pick up the rest of Holly Black's work because I was so obsessed with these. I'm literally so mad it took me so long to read these, because these are 5 stars. I loved them. I binged them in like 4 days, and incredible. So good. The final thing that I read this month, and this is where I consider it my 6th. Yeah, my 6th. It was Sugar and Spice by, hold on, I need to pull it up on my Kindle app because I don't remember, but it's Sugar and Spice by, oh, I should have done this already. My bad. There we go. Okay. The last thing I read in March was Sugar and Spice by InLoveWithForever. Now, this is my first full-length Driomyany book, fanfic, whatever, close enough. And this was all vibes, no plot. The entire plot was these 3 being a throuple. It was delicious. It was so fun. The stakes are basically 0. The spice was so incredible. So if you're looking for a really good Driomyany, I highly recommend Sugar and Spice. From what I understand, it's a pretty staple fic for that ship. But yeah, if you're looking to expand your ships a little bit, but you don't want to stray from the Dramione aspect, I thought this one was delicious. It was fantastic. We love a Narcissa moment, like a healthy, loving Narcissa moment, and you'll get it in here. So I loved that. Now, let's get on to the books that I want to read in April. So I have a couple of, well, really, there are a couple of YouTube videos planned, but obviously, like, within that, I have them structured a little bit. So my first one is that I want to read a few of, like, really popular, what I would consider stereotypical book talk books. One of these I'm really excited to read. The other 2, shall we say, I don't want to read them, but I want to have an informed opinion on them, if that makes sense. Because as I am a content creator in this space, I feel like it is my responsibility. People come to me like, oh, what about this? And I can be like, oh, I actually really didn't like that. I want to be able to say I didn't like that, not just like, oh, I read one book by this author and I haven't read anything. So first up is Archer's Voice by Mia Sheridan. I've not read any Mia Sheridan books. This was actually gifted to me by my friend Harley. I see so many videos of people crying over this book and this romance in general. It's one of your, I feel like, staple one-off romance books that you see on Book Talk. So I'm really excited to see what the deal is. I'll probably post reading reaction videos, kind of like how I did to Happy Place, where it's like a little bit of a reading vlog to it. So I'm hoping this stands up for the hype for me. We'll see, but there we go. Next up, and here's where I'm getting into the books that I'm like, I don't want to read these, but I feel like it's my responsibility as a bookish content creator to read these. I'm going to be reading Verity by Colleen Hoover. I read a single Colleen Hoover book 2 years ago. I read It Ends With Us. And all I can say is, Dear Ellen DeGeneres. So, I myself am not a coho girl. I'm not going to make fun of people for being a coho girl. I promise I won't, because I think that's disrespectful. But within the other side of that coin is I can also openly be like, I am not a coho fan. I want to see what the deal is with this book. And subsequently, I was sent this It actually has an autographed book plate in it. So I kind of feel bad being like I'm not a Coho fan and then I'm reading this autographed copy, but I'm like, I didn't ask for it. I didn't apply for it. I didn't buy it. This just showed up at my house one day, and it's the part of the DV nail polish collection. And I want to see, like, is this book, how bad is this book? How bad is this book? So stay tuned for that. Beyond that, I read Happy Place by Emily Henry last summer. Sobbed. That was one of my favorite books of, what was that, 2023? Yeah, 2023. I don't even know what time it is anymore. But I was also gifted Book Lovers and Beach Read. I have not read these books. I need to read these books. I loved Happy Place. I feel like Emily Henry is one of the few romance writers that I've encountered so far in my baby romance journey that does a really good job at showing, not telling. I loved her characterizations. I loved everything about it. Ooh, why is this blinking at me? I hope not. Well, if this stops randomly, it's because my memory card filled up and I need to finish it and I'm switching to another one. If it doesn't, then we'll find it and I'll just edit this out. Anyway, I'm really excited to get into the rest of Emily Henry's backlist, especially because I know Funny Story is coming out later this month, not until the 22nd. So I might do this in honor of Funny Story coming out like the 3rd week or so. But yeah, I'm really excited to get into these. Now, finally, what books did I acquire this month, you ask? These are in no particular order. I will let you know if these were sent to me versus if I bought these as we go, period. Okay, so first off, the Hive sent me Mickey Chambers Shakes It Up. I have seen so many people raving about this book. Again, I'm not a huge contemporary person, but when people are just raving about something, I'm like, I gotta be a part of that. So I'm really excited to dig into this one. This is from the Hive, aka Harlequin Trades, or Harlequin Publishing's, what's it called? Influencer group, whatever. So anyway, huge thank you to the Hive. I'm so stinking excited to dig into this. This is gonna be fantastic. I already know it. Next up, this one is from the Nerd Fam, which I love me some Rachel Sky at the Nerd Fam. So Rachel, if you're watching this, I love you. I love you. Thank you for every book that you've ever sent me. I am so wildly grateful. This is A Blood and Aether, the Harbinger's Book 1 by Harper Hawthorne. A rare conduit of light drawn to the shadows, a spy master who can't seem to stay away. Oh my Lanta. This one's publication date is April 17th, so it's coming out super soon. Of Blood and Aether is the first book in the Harbingers series, a captivating and character-driven dark romantasy saga, rife with sizzling tension, gut-wrenching angst, addictive banter, and ever-growing stakes. The Harbingers series is perfect for fans of ACOTAR, Fourth Wing, and For Blood and Ash. So, like, those are your really staple romantasy series that we tend to talk about on the internet. So, really excited to dive into this one. I have read all of those series, so I will absolutely be letting you guys know what I think and how I feel when I read this book. Now, this one I purchased, and it's Cemetery Boys by Aiden Thomas. I've heard and seen nothing but rave reviews about this. It's poised as like a YA paranormal trans romance situation, so I'm so excited to dig into this. I did buy this for the Trans Rights Readathon, which is technically over, I know, but frankly, the books that I chose for it, I'm currently right now reading Detransition Baby by Torrey Peters, and I mean, this is one of the best books I'll ever read. I know that without a doubt. It's just not a book that you can binge. It's a book that like really forces you to sit and confront things as you read it. And it's just so powerful, so beautiful, dry bits of humor, whatever. Anyway, I digress. I ramble. That book has taken me a long time to read, unexpectedly. So I'm still gonna be reading this, even though the Trans Rights Readathon is over. I'm still excited to dig into my trans books because these sound like such good stories. Next up, I was sent this one by Celadon Books in this really cute care package, which I'll definitely show you guys here in just a second. But this book is Honey, a novel by Isabel Banta, an addictive coming-of-age story that follows the meteoric rise of pop star Amber Young as she navigates fame and self-discovery in the late 90s and early 2000s. Okay, it's giving possibly body issues, body dysmorphia, confronting fame, being perceived, being known. Also, I love a coming-of-age story. I truly, truly love a coming-of-age story. Next up, I was also sent this one by Celadon Books, but I'm actually going to be including this one in a giveaway because I already have an arc of this one, but it's Listen for the Lie by Amy Tintera, and it's basically like this, it's written through the perspective of like a podcast trying to figure out, okay, who killed this girl? Who killed this girl? Was it her best friend or her sister? What if you thought you murdered your best friend and if everyone else thought so too? And what if the truth doesn't matter? So anyway, I'm not typically a thriller girly or a crime girly, but this sounds so interesting, and honestly, I'll never say no to books because I mean, I'll read it all. So I'm really excited to get into this. I'm gonna be doing a giveaway because I have a bunch of duplicate books. So stay tuned. This edition is gonna be in there. I'm keeping my ARC because I love ARCs. I bought this one. This is called The Woman Destroyed by Simone de Beauvoir. I included this one in my last YouTube video because it's part of my book haul when I checked out some new local bookstores. But it's in 3 immensely intelligent stories about the decay of passion. Simone de Beauvoir draws us into the lives of 3 women, all past their first youth, all facing unexpected crises. Enthralling as fiction, suffused with de Beauvoir's remarkable insights into women, The Woman Destroyed gives us a legendary writer at her best. I love everything about that. I also bought this one. This is called Bunny by Mona Awad. I hope I said that last name right. A wild and audacious and an ultimately unforgettable novel by one of the most innovative and original writers out there. I don't know, honestly, I hear this as being one of like your staple lit fic weird girl literature type of library editions. So if anything, I'm in my weird girl lit fic era, bring it on. And it's pink, look how cute, right? And again, I don't think I can say the name of this book without getting in trouble on the internet, but I got this one, which, I mean, I don't actually know what it's about, but it's popular enough that I'm not gonna summarize this for y'all because that's what Google's for, my love. I also bought this one. This one has been, I think this one is still in my haul from last week, but this one's been on my wish list for a while, but it's The Heaven and Earth Grocery Store by James McBride. I know this was Barnes & Noble's book of the year for last year, so I've literally been seeing it everywhere. I'm excited to read it. It's gonna be phenomenal. And again, still part of my haul for last week, I can't remember the titles. Before I Let Go and This Could Be Us, aka More Quintessential Kennedy Ryan. I love you, girl. I'm so excited to read these books. I bought these myself. I need to not talk about that like Kennedy sent me those herself. I'm not that cool. I wish I was. I bought this one in Lawrence at one of my favorite indie bookstores in Lawrence, Kansas, but it's called Fruit of the Dead by Rachel Lyon, and it is a Persephone Demeter retelling. It's giving mommy issues, and I love reading about mommy issues. It's probably gonna make me cry. Bring it on. I bought this one at Barnes & Noble. Hear me out. Look, it says signed copy on it, okay? And again, this is my love-hate relationship with Hanya Yanagihara because, again, A Little Life moved me so much. I feel like I've been just like on a book hangover ever since then and chasing that emotional intensity ever since then. So I got To Paradise, and this says it's a signed copy, but hear me out. I need to make sure that, like, you're kidding me. You're kidding me. No one is gonna believe me when I say this is a signed copy, like if it's not literally blatantly in front of their face like this. What is this about? I don't know. I think it's like a dual timeline, somewhat semi-fantastical story. A bold, brilliant novel spanning 3 centuries and 3 different versions of the American experiment about lovers, family, loss, and the elusive promise of utopia. I love it. Give me some deep, devastating topics. And then lastly, this one was sent to me by, I think, Simon & Schuster. Yeah, Simon & Schuster. This is Jaded by Ella Lee. This is her debut novel. So excited. Where is the little... Here we go. Jade has become everything she ever wanted to be. Successful lawyer, dutiful daughter, beloved girlfriend, loyal friend. Until Jade wakes up the morning after a work event, naked and alone with no idea how she got home, caught between her parents who can't understand, her boyfriend who feels betrayed, and her job that expects silence. Jade and the world she has so carefully constructed starts to crumble. She thought she was everything she ever wanted to be, but now she feels like nothing at all. For fans of Queenie and I May Destroy You, Jaded is both a darkly funny send-up of corporate culture and a blistering account of consent, power, and identity in a broken society. Sounds so powerful, so moving. I'm pumped to dig into this one. Again, thank you, Simon & Schuster, for sending me this. Like, look at this cover art. Is she not so stunning? I'm obsessed. I also forgot to mention one other book that is on my TBR for this month. Hopefully 2. I'm trying not to get too aggressive. But anyway, like I said, I'm right now reading Detransition Baby by Torrey Peters, and I'll come back with a more robust review of this, but so far it's a dual timeline story of this romantic relationship between 2 trans women, so a lesbian relationship, and the current timeline where one of the trans women detransitioned is living as a cisgender man again, even though she's obviously still trans on the inside, gets a woman pregnant, and then they go to her ex-girlfriend, and says, hey, do you want to maybe raise this baby with us? And it becomes this very unflinching look at womanhood, at motherhood, at what it means to be feminine. And obviously it explores the experience of specifically trans women and trans femme. It doesn't really dive into trans man as much. There's a little bit of trans man and trans masc in here, but I would say the primary focus is on femininity and womanhood. And I like it because it doesn't do it at the expense of cisgender women. And it's really interesting because it does draw parallels, and it kind of paints this like, hey, we're all women, like let's be united against this because we experience a lot of the same struggles. Specifically, these conversations come up between the woman who becomes pregnant, who is half white and half Asian, I believe Chinese, and she's basically like, why do you want to be a mother? Asking the trans woman still living as a trans woman. And she's like, what do you mean? Like, why is it always questionable when trans women want to be mothers? Like, why is it suddenly creepy? And versus like cisgender women are just, the question is more, why don't you want to have kids? And she's like, no, that's actually not true. She's like, poor women, women of color, you know, all of these other categories of women that basically aren't just cisgender white women, we have the same expectations on us. I'm not questioning your ability to mother. I'm asking you why you as a personal human want to be a mother. And I just think these exchanges are so beautiful. They're so mindful. They're so academic, but still so effective at the same time. And I just really find myself being so moved by this book. I think it's so beautifully done. If any of that speaks to you, I really recommend. I know I personally right now am really feeling drawn towards books that aren't afraid to discuss, shall we say, the ugly sides of motherhood. And that includes the ugly sides of the expectations of reproduction, whether, excuse me, whether that means society doesn't want you to have children, or whether society expects you to have children, as well as what society expects of you once you've had those children. And I've been so moved by some of these passages, and I can't wait to come on here with a more robust review of that. But anyway, my next read that I'm going to be doing after this one, these are due in 10 days, so I like really got to get moving on this. I'm not the fastest reader in the world, but it's called Freshwater by Akwaeke and Emezi. And let me see if I can pull up a little summary for you, because I'm the worst with summaries. I myself don't read summaries, so I'm awful with like regurgitating them. This Freshwater tells the story of Ada, an unusual child who is a source of deep concern to her southern Nigerian family. Young Ada is troubled, prone to violent fits. Born with one foot on the other side, she begins to develop separate selves within her as she grows into adulthood, and when she travels to America for college, a traumatic event on campus crystallizes the cells into something powerful and potentially dangerous, making Ada fade into the background of her own mind as these alters, now protective, now hedonistic, move into control. Written with stylistic brilliance and based in the author's realities, Freshwater dazzles with ferocious energy and serpentine grace. I'm sold. Like, how powerful does that sound? So I'm super excited to dig into the rest of these books. Have you read any of these? What are your thoughts on them? I'm so excited to hear, and stay tuned because I'm going to be doing some reading vlogs as I work my way through some of these popular books, through some of these Emily Henry books. April's going to be a good reading month. I just know it. I just know it.